Haircare, Secrets of Medieval Viking Warriors. Hey guys, tonight we're venturing into the wind-swept world of Viking warriors, not to raid or pillage, but to quietly, respectfully condition. That's right. Beneath the fur cloaks, behind the swords, past the long ships and war chants, lies a less sung story. Haircare, rituals involving combs, lye soap, and enough beard oil to make a modern grooming influencer jealous. You find yourself walking along a frost-bitten fjord, the sea to your left curling into grey foam, a village rising ahead, timber walls, turf-roofed homes, and smoke that smells like firewood and old fish. And within those homes, men and women who take their hair far more seriously than you'd expect from a society known for yelling and throwing axes. Let's be clear, you probably wouldn't survive this era. It's damp, it's cold, and if you touch someone's comb without asking, you might start a feud that lasts 3 generations. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to post your location and local time below. I love hearing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge past rows of drying fish and animal hides and step into the largest longhouse. Its door swinging open with a grumble. Inside, firelight dances across woven tapestries and shields. There's the sharp scent of iron tools and something richer. Maybe tallow soap or pine resin. You expected noise, but instead, there's focus, calm. A row of warriors seated by the fire, each bent over a low wooden bench, quietly combing their hair and beards. One man, his eyebrows thicker than a squirrel pelt, gently untangles a braid with a carved bone comb. Welcome to the morning routine in a Viking settlement. Not chaotic armor slamming or sword sharpening, but deliberate self-grooming. In fact, in this village, combing is not just personal hygiene. It's practically a religious moment. One woman passes a boy a small pot of ash and fat paste. He dabs it behind his ears and runs his fingers through his hair until it shines. Another warrior splashes cold water from a basin onto his face, gasping as the chill bites. His beard is tied in 2 neat forks, each bound with a strip of dyed wool. Decorative? Yes. Functional? Allegedly. It keeps the beard out of the soup. there's a ritual to it. Comb, twist, oil, pause, comb again. Not unlike yoga, but colder and involving more sheep fat. You're invited to sit by the hearth and handed a small comb of your own. It's smooth, made from horn. The teeth just wide enough not to rip out half your scalp. You run it gently through your hair. It creaks. A good sign. Apparently, in this settlement, each warrior has their own grooming station. Nothing fancy, just a stool, a bit of polished metal for a mirror, and a cloth bundle of tools. Scissors, pins, beads, bone combs, and sometimes, if they're feeling bold, a dab of herbal oil made from juniper, birch, or the mysterious root that bites. Across the room, a warrior plats his hair into 3 tight cords and ties them back with sinew. He mutters something about not being caught looking like a wind-tossed sheep. If the gods decide to summon him to Valhalla today, that might sound vain. But in Viking culture, grooming wasn't vanity. It was dignity. To look unkempt was to look like you didn't care. And not caring? That was practically criminal. Historians still argue whether this intense grooming culture was due to Norse spiritual beliefs, social competition, or just really itchy wool cloaks. The likely answer? All of the above. It wasn't just the warriors, either. Women's hairstyles were equally complex. Elegant knots, braids coiled around their heads, sometimes with tiny bronze pins shaped like animals, or miniature swords. One older woman shows you hers. Keeps the trolls from nibbling, she says. Deadpan, back outside. The cold bites again, but your scalp is warm. Somehow, combing in this place makes you feel more awake, more grounded. The air smells of smoke and pine. And somewhere, a goat is trying to eat someone's hat. You sit quietly by the fire and watch the light play across polished braids and carefully trimmed beards. It's not just hair, it's history. Woven one strand at a time, the light in the longhouse has shifted. It's still dim, but now golden, as if the fire has started whispering to the morning rather than just crackling at it. Around you, the grooming continues, not hurried or distracted, but with the sort of focus you might expect from someone crafting a saga in their own hair. A boy of about 12 is learning to comb his beard. You didn't know 12-year-olds had beards here, but this one's got the early makings, wisps that curl like smoke under his chin. His father watches, arms folded, nodding solemnly as the boy catches a knot and winces. The comb? Passed down from grandfather to grandson. Apparently, it's bad luck to start your own comb lineage. You must inherit your first one. Or, at the very least, find it dramatically in a field under strange circumstances. The boy finishes, then taps a small jar of bare fat pomade, smears a fingertip across his chin, and spreads it like someone icing a cupcake with intense emotional baggage. You're told this blend is sacred. It keeps the beard healthy, the skin soft, and most importantly, it smells like confidence and old trees. In a quiet corner, a pair of sisters are unwinding their hair from sleep braids, loose coils tied at night to prevent tangles. One gently oils the ends with a mixture of duck fat and sage. The scent is oddly comforting, like roasted poultry and wisdom. She says it protects her hair from the cracking wind. Her sister scoffs and says it just keeps the lice away. You don't ask how they tested that. A warrior with frost-crusted boots sits on a stool near you. His beard is vast, sectioned like armor plates, each band wrapped with leather cord. He works through it with practiced precision, pausing every few strokes to reheat his comb over the fire. Goes through easier when it's warm, he says. Also scares the beard spirits out. Right, beard spirits. A nearby woman, tall, wiry, sharp-eyed, rolls her sleeves and prepares to tend to her partner's hair. She untangles a section near his temple, murmuring something low in Old Norse, then braids it with tiny beads made of bone and amber. This isn't affection, it's respect. Grooming your companion before battle, before court, before winter. It's a bond like armor. And every household has its own style. One family prefers hair bound in tight loops along the scalp, supposedly to keep thoughts orderly. Another lets it fall loose and wild, using a sap-based gloss to give it an uncanny shine. You try some and immediately feel like a tree with too many secrets. Then comes the ritual of shared combs, a custom reserved only for the closest of friends or blood relatives. Sharing a comb casually would be like swapping souls without a receipt. But to be offered one, that's a rare honor. A man named Kettle sits beside you and gestures to his lap. He opens a cloth bundle and reveals a comb carved from whalebone, etched with tiny runes. Without speaking, he offers it to you. You accept. slowly. The comb is warm from his hands. As you draw it through your hair, he smiles faintly and says, "Now we both know what wind feels like, on the same path." Poetic. Also confusing. You nod as if that makes total sense. There's a communal tub of scented water, not for full bathing, but for splashing on the scalp or beard. It smells of pine needles, mint, and something sharp like vinegar. You dip your fingers in and rub it behind your ears. A nearby elder raises an eyebrow and says, "That spot's for memory." You add more, just in case. Outside the longhouse, two men sit on a flat stone bench, trimming each other's mustaches with what look like tiny swords. Technically, they're shears, but in their hands, they're wielded like tools of honor. One snips a single hair with reverence and says, "That one betrayed me in a dream." Historians still argue whether such elaborate rituals were widespread or regional eccentricities. But even in burial mounds, Viking combs and grooming tools are found tucked alongside weapons and jewelry. A statement, perhaps, that death was no reason to look like you'd been caught in a wind tunnel. As the morning slips toward noon, a kind of calm descends. The fire is steady, the hair now glossy and organized. The combs resting on fur-lined benches like instruments after a concert. You sit a little straighter. You feel strangely composed. You catch your reflection in a polished bit of bronze and think, maybe you wouldn't be entirely hopeless here. Until, of course, the pig waddles in, steals someone's beard tie, and bolts out the door. Third time this week, someone mutters. No one panics. They simply sigh, gather their combs, and prepare for whatever the pig has planned next. The scent hits you before the bowl is even passed to your side. Sharp, smoky, with a faint suggestion of something herbal and slightly unpleasant. A young woman, her sleeves rolled and her hands already dyed from ash, grins as she sets a lumpy grey paste on the bench next to you. "Shampoo," she says. "The good batch, made yesterday. Still warm if you stir it. This is your first introduction to Viking shampoo, though perhaps soap is the better term. In the Norse world, shampoo isn't so much a bottle with coconut-scented foam as it is a deeply involved brew of wood ash, water, and animal fat, mixed together over days, sometimes weeks, until it thickens into a strange, caustic grey gel that smells like burnt soup and defiance. You dip a finger into the bowl. It's soft, gritty, and leaves a tingling film on your skin. That would be the lye. A powerful cleaning agent that comes from leaching rainwater through ash. It strips oil, removes lice, and according to one warrior, can scare off bad dreams if you rub it behind your knees. You're not entirely sure that last part is medically supported. Still, the logic holds. Vikings might not have had salons, but they had oil lamps, sweat, battle grime, and wool cloaks that turned every scalp into a potential swamp. Cleanliness wasn't just about comfort. It was about function, ritual, and pride. You watch as a man with shoulder-length blonde hair sits cross-legged while his sister ladles warm water over his scalp. He flinches but stays still. Then she rubs the lye soap into his hair, massaging it slowly, methodically. Steam rises as it's rinsed out, leaving behind a scent of smoldering birch and something faintly medicinal. He shakes his head, water flying. His braids are undone. His hair is wild, but it shines like fresh straw under the firelight. Next to him, an older woman prepares her own mix, this one enriched with crushed juniper berries and dried seaweed. Makes it silky, she claims. Also keeps bugs confused. You silently decide to take her word for it. For those too sensitive for the full soap, there's a gentler rinse made from dried nettles and mint soaked in mead. Yes, mead. The alcohol supposedly helps dissolve buildup and leaves your hair smelling like a polite tavern. Of course, everyone here has their own version of the ultimate cleansing recipe. One man insists it's duck grease and ash. Another swears by fermented barley paste. Yet another uses goat milk steeped with crushed oyster shells. It softens the tangles, he says, while his goat peers in from outside with a concerned expression. You're handed your own portion of the good batch and ushered toward the water basin. It's lukewarm, cloudy with use, but somehow still inviting. A girl passes you a cloth to tuck over your shoulders and says, "Don't worry, it only stings a little at first. You lather, you rinse, you sting, but then you feel amazing. Somehow lighter, sharper, as though your scalp has been whispering, 'Thank you.'" In Old Norse, there's even a grooming chant, a soft, rhythmic recitation of syllables hummed in time with the rinsing. Ash to root, wind to braid, let no troll in tangles stay. Everyone knows it, even the pig hums along, or possibly grunts in rhythm. Hard to tell. You sit near the fire afterward, towel draped over your shoulders. as your hair dries into gentle waves you didn't know you had. A passing elder gives you a nod of approval. You try not to beam with pride. Historians still debate whether Vikings used lye soap routinely or reserved it for special occasions, feasts, court days, battles. What's clear is that they made it, they used it, and they passed recipes down with the same reverence they gave to fishing knots and burial songs. In fact, some runestones mention ingredients believed to be used in cleansing rituals. One refers to the smoke of bone water, another to the black foam that purifies. Whether these were metaphor or instructions is anyone's guess. But in this moment, you feel like you've joined a tradition older than most empires. The fire crackles, someone adds a pine cone. For scent, for luck, possibly both. You watch your reflection shimmer in the water bowl. Clean hair, clear skin, and just enough ash behind the ears to make a historian nod approvingly. Not bad, you think? Not bad at all. The wind outside is picking up, carrying flakes of snow that whip through the cracks in the door like curious ghosts. But inside the longhouse, it's all hands and braids. The fire glows brighter now, lighting up a semicircle of seated warriors, each with their head bent, strands of hair looped and twisted into patterns you've only seen in museum dioramas and overly ambitious cosplay tutorials. You're watching the ancient and oddly soothing art of Viking braidwork, not just for beauty, but for battle. A young warrior sits before you now, thick auburn hair sectioned into tight ridges along his scalp. His sister works in silence, fingers flying, tucking in strips of dyed wool and tiny bronze beads between the folds. The effect is both fierce and elegant, like a war banner made personal. She finishes with a final knot and says, "Now he'll fight clean," which doesn't mean he won't get bloodied. It means his hair won't fall into his eyes when he swings an axe. Function, you realize, is everything. These braids keep hair out of helmets, keep sweat from blinding eyes, and help manage the mess of fur-lined collars and iron gorgets. But there's more. There's meaning in every strand. You learn that braid styles can signal clan allegiance, battlefield experience, or family grief. One woman's side braid is wrapped in black thread. "My cousin died last frost," she says quietly. This tells others not to ask unless they have good firewood and better soup. Another man's braids are marked with knot patterns associated with the sea. His father was a sailor. He carries the pattern forward with salt-sprinkled reverence. You see a third warrior wearing a single braid coiled behind the ear, secured with an iron ring, a mark of someone who's taken an oath and intends to survive it. Not all braids are for solemnity. Some are just plain intimidating. One man has tied small bones, rat, rabbit, you hope, into his beard. Another has shaved the sides of his head and braided what remains into a tight rope of hair so thick it doubles as a handle. You ask if anyone's ever used it in battle. He grins. Only once. He never tried that again. Children are practicing, too. A girl not older than 10 is braiding her younger brother's shaggy locks. Every time she gets a twist right, she yells, "Shield maiden, level up," and makes a horn-blowing noise. Her mother, nearby, pretends not to smile. You're handed a comb and a strip of cloth soaked in something that smells like tree bark and vinegar. It's to bind the braid's end. Keeps it tight in weather, says the woman assisting you. Also tastes terrible, so no one chews it. Your hair is sectioned, pulled gently, woven. The feeling is oddly meditative, a slow dance of scalp and tension. Every tug feels purposeful, every twist like a story being told in silence. Across from you, another ritual is unfolding. The battle knot, binding. 2 warriors sit back to back, each braiding the other's hair with ceremonial slowness. At the end, they tie the final strands together and let them sit for 12 breaths before untying. It's not about appearance. It's about trust. One man shares a tale of a warrior who braided his hair so tightly before battle that when he fell, it kept his head intact. Whether or not the story is true, you nod solemnly. It feels like it should be. There's a lull as braids are finished, beads tightened, ends singed with a coal to seal them. Someone passes around hair salve, a blend of goat tallow, birch sap, and something minty. Keeps the braids from drying out, you're told. Also makes hugging slightly more complicated. Historians still debate the extent to which Norse warriors stylized their hair for combat versus ceremony. Some argue that the sagas exaggerate. Others point to the combs found in nearly every burial site. Finely made, well used, and stored with care. One researcher suggested that braiding was as much a ritual of preparation as donning armor or sharpening blades. You believe it now. There's something powerful in this, something grounding. You sit straighter. You feel ready. Not for battle, just for the weight of your own hair being seen, tended, respected. A fire crackles. Someone braids a daisy into a beard. The pig has fallen asleep next to someone's braid kit. All feels right with the world. You close your eyes for a moment and feel the braid hang like a tether to the ground beneath your feet. Even if the wind howls again, even if the combs vanish, you'll know this pattern by touch, by heart, by memory. The air smells like roasted onions and warm wool, which can only mean one thing: lunch. But you're not heading to a meal just yet. You're being led to a bench near the hearth, where two older men are already seated, locked in a quiet, unspoken contest. Their weapons, beards, or more precisely, epic, aggressively maintained beards that shimmer in the firelight like braided rope dipped in honey. Meet Bjarni the bold and Bjorn the not so bold, but very conditioned. Two veterans of countless raids and countless more hours of grooming. Their feud is the stuff of legend here. And no, it wasn't over land or love or stolen mead. It was over beard oil. You're told the story in hushed tones by a child passing you a comb carved with both their names and a goat in between. Neutral party. It goes something like this. Years ago, both men returned from the same longship raid and were celebrated for their bravery. Bjarni came back with a beard so wind-whipped and rugged that it inspired 3 songs and a moderately famous tapestry. Bjorn returned with a beard so glossy and symmetrical that several women fainted on the spot, and a goose allegedly bowed to him. The village split in admiration. Camps formed. Some swore by Bjarni's raw, untamed approach, claiming that true power lived in the tangle. Others pledged loyalty to Bjorn's meticulous style, insisting that symmetry scared off frost giants. Since then, the two have sat side by side every week, combing their beards with increasing extravagance. Today, Bjarni is working in a bit of soot for texture. Bjorn, meanwhile, is sprinkling dried rose petals into his braid. The competition is gentle, oddly theatrical, and strangely moving. They never speak directly. They just raise eyebrows and flick their combs with flair. You're offered the chance to assist. One of them, you're not sure which, hands you a small pot labeled Victory Paste. It smells like pine resin, garlic, and unearned confidence. You dab a little behind your ears and feel 10% more dramatic. Each man keeps a beard journal, written on thin strips of birch bark. Bjarni's entries are brief. Things like wind-tamed, frost-bent. It curled left, I followed. Bjorn's are longer, almost poetic. Today, The beard mirrored the fjord, smooth, reflective, slightly fishy. You watch as they each prepare their contest braids, twisting their beards into complex loops and patterns, some borrowed from knotwork used in ship rigging. It's not for battle, it's for each other, for the performance. The audience, everyone and no one. The point is to care that much, even when no one's scoring. Someone tells you that this feud once ended briefly when the pig accidentally ate both their beard beads. They were forced to wear matching straw ties for a week. Peace blossomed briefly. Then Bjorn got a new comb made of walrus ivory, and Bjarni responded by crafting a beard ring from melted sword hilts. Historians might raise an eyebrow at all this. Some insist it's unlikely Viking warriors invested this much in facial hair rivalry, but others note that combs and beard tools are among the most common finds in Norse graves. Even among warriors, carved with love, carried into battle, packed for the afterlife. The story of Bjarni and Bjorn may not appear in the sagas, but in this longhouse, it lives in every smirk, every strand, every glint of oil under firelight. You ask which of them is winning. Someone replies, they are. Both men sit back at the same time, their beards freshly arranged, their expressions serene. They nod, not to each other, but to the room, as if to say, the work is done, the greatness maintained. Then, without a word, they begin the lunch beard ritual, wrapping their lower faces in linen cloths to protect their masterpieces from soup splatter. Dignity is everything, even with turnip stew. You join them. Your braid still hangs neatly. Your scalp still tingles faintly from the soap. Your fingers smell like pine and rosewater, and something ambiguously fermented. You may never be Bjarni or Bjorn, but today, at least, you combed your hair like it mattered, and that's enough. Lunch has long since passed. The stew is gone, the pig is napping, and the longhouse hums with the soft clatter of combs being cleaned, folded cloths being tucked away, and the occasional sneeze from someone who inhaled too much ash-flavored beard oil. You sit by the hearth again, warm and full, when a hush falls over the room, not the kind of silence that demands attention, but the kind that settles when something meaningful is about to begin. It's time for the hair oaths. You're told this is a winter tradition, quiet, intimate, and not for show. A moment where warriors, lovers, and sometimes even prank-happy siblings sit together. tend to each other's hair and speak words meant to stick like sap in a pine knot. The hearth is cleared, and a circle forms. The air smells of braided wool and smoke-dried herbs. You're invited to join, not to speak right away, but to listen. You take your seat between a shield maiden with a braid shaped like a serpent and a man threading a bead the size of a walnut into his cousin's beard. The first oath is spoken as a lock of hair is smoothed with bear oil. I swear not to speak of your worst idea, as long as you don't repeat it. Everyone nods. A solid start. Another voice chimes in as fingers gently separate a long strand of pale hair. I promise to share my fire, even if your boots are wet and you've eaten the last onion. Then a louder, younger voice. I swear to fight by your side, unless you make that fish soup again. The room chuckles. You notice that every oath is sealed not with blood or flame, but with a hair gesture, a braid, a tie, a trimming. One man snips an inch of his beard and offers it to his brother, who weaves it into his own braid. You blink. That's intense. You're told about a rare but serious rite called the three-strand vow, where three people braid one long cord of hair from their combined locks and wear it tucked beneath their tunics for a full season. It represents a bond that cannot be broken, not even if one of them forgets whose turn it is to feed the goat. You ask if you can offer a hair oath yourself. An elder nods. Your hands feel clumsy, but someone gently places a comb in them. You reach over, gently smooth a lock of the shield maiden's hair, and whisper, I promise to learn your ways, even if I never get all the knots out. She smiles. You've passed the test. As the oaths wind down, a woman brings out a pouch filled with storm beads, tiny, mismatched charms made of clay, bone, and sea glass. These are added to braids as reminders of promises made. This one, she says, tying a green bead into her brother's hair, is for the time I forgave you before you apologized. You receive one too, a pale wooden bead with a single groove carved into its edge. To remember to laugh when your hair looks ridiculous. The boy who gives it to you says, he's not wrong. Your side braid is aggressively asymmetrical. Not all oaths are spoken aloud. Some are whispered into combs and left in hidden nooks of the longhouse. Others are traced in braids and then undone, with only the braid having heard. Historians still debate the significance of hair in Norse vow-making, while sagas occasionally mention warriors cutting locks before a journey or braiding hair before battle. Few agree on how widespread these customs were. But in this longhouse, it's clear. Hair is memory. Hair is a promise. As the fire dims and the oaths are finished, you hear the soft scraping of a comb placed in a wooden box. These are the oath combs. Someone says they're only used today. Once a year, you glance inside and see combs of every kind. Simple, carved, broken, polished. Some still carry a few strands of hair. One even has a rune etched along the spine. Remember without needing to remember. The longhouse settles. Someone hums. The pig snores. Curled beside the oath box, you lie back, your hair still warm from hands that respected it, tied with a promise that now lives in a single bead. You won't forget, even if the braid is gone by morning. Morning comes again, softer this time. A fine mist clings to the edges of the longhouse, and the usual bustle of boots and firewood is muted, as if even the warriors are content to move just a little slower today. You're invited to help with the day's quiet task, polishing the grooming tools. A low table has been cleared and set with bundles of cloth, little pots of oil, and a surprisingly vast collection of combs, shears, and beard sheaths. Yes, beard sheaths. It seems Viking warriors didn't just braid their beards. They sometimes wrapped them in protective covers to keep them clean during battle or to impress at court gatherings. Nothing says respect me like a leather cone strapped to your chin. You pick up a comb from the pile. It's heavy in the hand, carved from bone, with teeth worn smooth by decades of use. A small notch at the top indicates its owner once cracked it while cleaning blood, likely their own, from a mat of hair. The initials burned into the handle read OT, and someone near you mutters, Olaf the Tardy, always late, never dirty. There's pride in these tools. Each comb is unique, some carved from ivory, others from horn or wood, and a few from whalebone, shimmering faintly in the firelight. You run your fingers along one with delicate floral etching, surprised by the softness of the details. Wedding comb, a woman says, nodding at your hand. Given to the bride to keep her thoughts straight, didn't work, but she was never blamed. You learn that some shears have names, tiny blades with ceremonial purposes, used only on feast days or before a thing. The Viking court assembly. One pair is etched with knotwork and wolf heads. Another, oddly enough, is shaped like a fish. The trout snippers, their owner says proudly, very sharp, very judgmental. You're invited to oil the blades. The process is precise. Dip the cloth in a little seal fat. Warm it between your hands. Then run it along the blade while humming a short rhyme about keeping your hair above your shoulders, not scattered on the floor of Valhalla as you work. Someone pulls out a chest of beard sheaths, small tubes or pouches made from linen, leather, or occasionally wood. They're decorated with embroidery, runes, even bits of dyed fur. You watch as a boy carefully threads his uncle's beard through one, braiding the end and sliding it into the sheath like tucking a banner into its holster. Not everyone used them, but among those who did, the beard sheath became a mark of carefulness, pride, or personal ritual. In one tale, a warrior refused to draw his sword until his beard sheath was tied just right, so his beard wouldn't judge his swing. He survived that battle, and yes, the beard was tied immaculately. Nearby, a woman repairs a broken comb with a sliver of pine and a needle made from fish bone. Tools break, she says, but hands remember. You help her stitch the base with thread soaked in beeswax, and somehow it holds. She hands the comb to her son. Treat it like a sword, she tells him, but for your face. Historians have marveled at the number of combs recovered from Viking graves, many placed in pouches or worn on belts. Some suggest they were as essential as weapons, indicators of status, health, or self-discipline. Others believe they were simply practical tools. But in this longhouse, the answer is simple. They're sacred in their own quiet way. You clean another comb, this one stained at the tip, worn nearly to a nub. Someone tells you it belonged to a man who used it so often. He forgot how to hold a spear with both hands. You smile? That sounds like a man with glorious hair and no regrets. Once all the tools are polished, they're placed on a folded wool cloth and returned to their owners. A small ceremony follows. Each person holds their comb to their forehead for a heartbeat, then tucks it into a leather pouch or hangs it from their belt. One man, seeing you without a pouch of your own, passes you a small cloth bundle. Inside is a simple horn comb, plain but balanced, the teeth smooth from use. No comb goes unused, he says. Now it remembers you. You run your fingers along the edge and feel a weight you didn't know you were carrying ease slightly. It's not a sword. It's not a shield, but it's yours. And somehow, that's enough. The snow is falling again, but today it feels gentler, like flour shaken from the sky. You pull your cloak tighter, and follow a trail of boot prints toward the fire pit, where something unusual is happening. Two men are seated on stumps, heads bowed as a third carefully applies a yellowish paste to their hair with a brush made of straw. A faint, almost sweet odor wafts through the air, faintly sour, faintly eggs. Bleaching day. Someone murmurs behind you. They're going blonde. Wait, what? You're ushered closer, and it's explained. Some Vikings, particularly in the southern regions or higher status groups, lightened their hair intentionally, not just for appearance, though blonde hair was definitely admired, but also, some say, to signal purity, youth, or divine favor. The bleach is homemade, of course, a mixture of wood ash, fermented urine, crushed eggshells, and herbs. Yes, urine. You try not to gag as a woman cheerfully stirs a clay bowl of the yellowish concoction and pats the shoulder of the next person in line. You'll smell like destiny, she says. One of the bleach seekers, a brawny man with a jawline like a glacier, explains that he does this every few weeks in winter. Harder to find sunlight this time of year. He shrugs. So we bring the light ourselves. He lifts a lock of already pale hair. Whiter it gets, luckier I am. You ask if it actually works. It does, he replies. Last year, I only fell through one frozen river. There's a long bench where others sit with their paste drying. Some wrap their heads in warm cloth, while others lean toward the fire, careful not to get too close. One man sits with a goose perched on his shoulder. Emotional support animal, he says, deadpan. You're offered a sample. You sniff it. You decline. Still, you can't deny the results. Neither. You watch as someone rinses their hair after the process and emerges with strands nearly silver under the pale sun. It shines. They beam. Others go more subtle. A streak here, a patch there. Some just do the tips. Keeps the shadow spirits from grabbing me, one says, wiggling his fingers near his temple. You nod solemnly. No one wants grabby spirits. You ask whether the practice is gendered. The answer, not particularly. Men, women, children, all bleach for different reasons. One elderly woman lifts her bonnet to show a perfectly white patch at the crown of her head. So my ancestors can spot me in a crowd, she says with a wink. Then come the debates. A cluster gathers near the edge of the village to discuss the deeper meanings. Some argue the bleach was a class marker, that only those with time and resources bothered. Others claim it was about ritual purification, burning away the old self before a new season. A few scoff and say it was purely cosmetic. Vanity with a good backstory. Historians still argue, too. Some point to medieval texts, noting that Norsemen were notably fair, but debate whether that was natural or achieved. There's even evidence that bleaching might have served a secondary purpose. Delousing. Turns out lie. Urine and ash aren't great for bugs, but great for dramatic flair. One particularly bold man shows you a lock of hair he's saved from his first ever bleaching. It's preserved in beeswax, kept in a bone locket, and worn around his neck. My old self, he explains, dumb as moss, but still mine. As the ritual wraps, the leftovers are poured into the fire, a sizzling, smelly farewell to the past. Steam rises, a goat sneezes. Someone starts a song. Not a saga, but a simple chant. Yellow hair, wild glare, frost and ash, and fight and care. You hum along. The participants, now glowing faintly in the firelight, begin drying their hair with cloths. Some style it into high braids. Others let it fall loose. Everyone seems lighter, somehow, like they've stepped a little closer to the sun without waiting for spring. Before returning to the longhouse, you notice one woman rubbing the remaining bleach mixture on a wooden comb. It remembers, she says, and next time it'll know where to go. You step inside again, the warmth hitting your cheeks, your scalp still tingling from second-hand confidence. You didn't bleach your hair today, but a little part of you wonders. Maybe next time. The longhouse is busier than usual today. Benches are dragged into neat rows, furs shaken out and laid flat, and someone's trying, unsuccessfully, to hang a shield on a rafter for decoration. You're told preparations are underway for the thing. The Viking assembly where disputes are settled, alliances proposed, and insults aired publicly with just enough flair to remain mostly dignified. But you're not here for politics. Not really. You're here to witness something far more riveting. Hair as legal leverage. You watch as a man kneels on a thick rug, carefully grooming his beard while muttering aloud what sounds like a speech. His daughter combs the sides of his head, tightens his braids, then plucks out a small twig. You're going to court, she says, not into a tree. You chuckle, but she's serious. Because appearance at the thing matters a lot. In this world, arriving uncombed or disheveled to the thing isn't just sloppy. It's disrespectful. It's read as a signal of arrogance, shame, or even guilt. And to stand in front of the chieftains with your beard undone, or your hair falling into your eyes, that's as bad as showing up without your weapon. One elder says, hair is your honor, but also your argument. You sit near the hearth with a small crowd as two women braid ribbons into each other's hair, preparing for their family's case to be heard. The colors indicate allegiance. Blue for sea clans, green for mountain folk, red for blood ties. One wears all three. She has a lot to say. Apparently, even the children get involved. One girl gently oils her brother's cowlick flat. The elders don't listen to messy boys, she explains. They just smile and say, you'll grow into your sense. He hates that. A man tells you a story about a court case where one party braided their beard into the shape of a question mark, a gesture meant to indicate humility and curiosity. He won the dispute. Another had his hair coiled into 7 spirals, each representing a witness he brought to the stand. One of them, allegedly, was a chicken. Historians are still unsure about that one. There's an older tradition called the shame knot, a style worn by someone who has lost a public case or made an offense. It's a top knot twisted sideways, bound with a single rawhide strip. The idea is that your regret should be visible until you make things right. One man tells you he wore his for a month after accusing someone of stealing his goat, only to realize the goat had moved in with another family voluntarily. She liked their onions better, he admits. When the thing officially begins, the longhouse opens its doors and everyone files out. You follow into the pale grey light and across the packed snow to the open air meeting field. There, a wooden platform stands, modest but clearly important. Beside it, 3 chairs draped in fur, occupied by the local judges, and below them, a gathering of braids, beads, buns, and top knots that would rival any fashion parade. You see hair shaped into spirals, combs with gold inlay, and at least one head entirely shaved, except for a strip down the center, slicked into a ridge with what smells suspiciously like fish fat. A man steps forward, accused of damaging someone's barn. He wears his hair slicked and tied back with a red ribbon, a signal that he intends to offer compensation. The complainant has their braids bound into tight triangles, which apparently symbolizes strong claim and moderate patience. You didn't know hair could carry such nuance. Arguments are heard, jokes made, decisions rendered. One case is dismissed entirely after both parties laugh too hard to continue. The judges nod sagely. Laughter is the best verdict. You spot Bjorn from earlier. Yes, that Bjorn, with his beard looped into a perfect heart shape. He's here as a character witness. His testimony? The man keeps his beard cleaner than the god's dishes. I trust him. And they do. As the thing wraps, a final ritual begins. The hair bearing. Those involved in disputes remove one braid, unravel it, and burn the ribbon used to bind it. This act symbolizes the airing of grievance and the commitment to leave it behind. The fire crackles as strands fall in, curling like smoke-thin memories. Historians still discuss whether Viking courts were as theatrical as this. Some suggest the hair rituals were more local than widespread, while others believe that hair was just another part of Norse law's intense attention to symbolism and visible intention. But today, you've seen enough to know when a Viking speaks, their hair speaks too. You walk back to the longhouse as the sun dips behind the hills, casting braids and shadows across the snow. You feel the weight of your own braid again. It isn't a legal statement, but if someone asked where you stood on anything today, you could point to it and say, here, combed, ready, honest. You're watching a man cry as someone cuts his hair, not because he's hurt, at least not physically, but because the moment is heavy, final, maybe even sacred. Today is one of those rare days when hair isn't about pride or polish. It's about punishment. In the far corner of the village, near a patch of wind-blasted pine trees, a group has gathered in quiet anticipation. A wooden stool sits alone in the center, and beside it, a pair of sharp shears resting on a cloth. You're told this is the site of the hair-cutting sentence, a form of social punishment for those who've broken trust, damaged honor, or otherwise embarrassed themselves in spectacular fashion. The man on the stool, Eric, is being shorn for boasting falsely about a bear fight. Apparently, he claimed to have fought a bear with his bare hands, only for the bear to later be discovered living peaceably in his sister's goat shed, completely unharmed. The village didn't take kindly to being lied to for dramatic effect, unless it's a good lie. Eric's was a bad one. The ritual begins with silence. A woman, his aunt, it turns out, steps forward, combs his hair once from crown to chin, then lifts the shears. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Everyone understands. This is about resetting something. She snips off a single thick braid and lays it across a bowl filled with ash and snow. Eric doesn't flinch, but his shoulders slump just a little, like he's letting go of more than just a hairstyle. Hair, in Viking society, was often linked to honor, identity, and lineage. To lose it, especially in public, was to wear your shame until it grew back, a kind of walking apology, visible to every neighbor and goat who happened to wander by. You glance at others in the crowd. One man has a growing patch of uneven fuzz near his temple. Another wears a simple cap, hiding what's likely a recently shortened head of hair. They nod at Eric as he rises. It's not ridicule. It's solidarity. They've been there. They survived it. He will too. But it wasn't always so gentle. You're told stories, half-whispered, about more brutal variants of the practice. In certain warrior groups, especially among elite raiding bands, losing your beard was the worst fate. It signaled failure, dishonor, even cowardice. One tale describes a man who returned from a failed raid and was forcibly shaved. He later exiled himself into the woods for a year until his beard regrew long enough to be seen by the ravens. A little dramatic? Maybe. But in a culture where external presentation mirrored internal strength, it was no small thing. Sometimes, haircutting was used not for punishment, but for marking new roles. One girl in the village recently became an apprentice healer. Her braids were trimmed and tied with white thread, signaling her transition from childhood to learning. Another boy had his bangs shaved clean before leaving to study shipbuilding in a distant fjord. So the wind won't mess up his thoughts. Someone jokes. There's even a tradition called the braid undoing, reserved for those returning from long journeys. You're invited to watch one now. A woman stands behind her son, back from 2 winters abroad. His travel braids are stiff with salt and thyme, but she patiently unwinds them one by one, combing out the dust and stories. Each untangled strand seems to loosen whatever weight he carried back. You help gather the fallen strands. Most are burned, some are buried, and one is woven into a small talisman. That's for safe travels, she says, slipping it into his satchel. Historians still wrestle with the specifics of hair as punishment in Viking times. Some sources suggest it was rare. Others imply it was common, especially in disputes involving pride, betrayal, or foolishness. But few disagree on one point. Hair was never just hair. It was a symbol, a signal, a script the body wrote over time. And sometimes, to write a new sentence, you had to erase the old one. That night, you see Eric again, seated quietly by the hearth. His scalp is bare in patches, his mood subdued, but there's a warmth in his eyes. Someone hands him a comb. He takes it, doesn't use it yet, just holds it. The pig waddles over and leans against his leg. Comfort, in its own oinking way. You realize that in this world, hair is not just how you look, it's how you begin again. Snowflakes drift lazily from a pewter-colored sky, clinging to cloaks and eyebrows alike. But you're not watching the weather. You're watching a man unpack a small wooden box that contains, among other things, a pair of shears, 3 combs, a silver flask of oil, and a whetstone. This is Stigandr, and he is the village's traveling barber warrior. Yes, that's a thing. He sharpens swords and trims sideburns. He's equal parts groomer and fighter. And in the world of Viking villages, he's a welcome and slightly mythical presence. Not every settlement can maintain its own grooming master, so Stigandr wanders, carrying knowledge of regional hair traditions, folk remedies, and at least a dozen different ways to avoid nicking your chin with a dull blade. He arrives once each season, striding into town with a sack of grooming tools slung over one shoulder and a shield strapped to his back. Not just for defense, but as a mobile grooming station. His shield is polished on the inside like a mirror, with tiny notches where he rests scissors and pins. You follow him to the longhouse, where a bench is already waiting. One by one, villagers sit for their turn. He works in silence, save for the occasional hum or observation. Too much sap in your braid, he says to a man with twigs stuck behind his ear. Your mustache wants to leave you, he tells another, flicking a wild strand into submission. You've been sleeping angry, he murmurs to a boy with a tangled crown. Braids don't lie. It's not just about style, it's about reading the hair. Stigandr has an uncanny gift for sensing mood, energy, even secrets from someone's grooming habits. One woman comes in tight-lipped, sits quietly for her trim, and leaves blinking back tears. He doesn't press. He just hands her a small braid ring. For patience, he says. You sit next. He combs your hair slowly, pauses over a stubborn knot, then says, thinking too much. But at least you're not pretending otherwise. You don't even ask how he knows. He works with deft fingers, trimming ends, smoothing oil over your scalp, combing in small circles like he's tuning an instrument. When he finishes, he taps the crown of your head gently. You're good. For now. Later that afternoon, you watch him craft mustache shields for two elderly warriors. Tiny wooden strips that tie above the lip to keep soup from interfering with facial hair. Every warrior ages, he says, but no warrior should slurp into his own dignity in exchange for his services. Villagers offer news, food, and stories. One family trades him smoked trout. A child gives him a carved cat made from driftwood. He accepts each gift solemnly, tucks them into his bag, and always returns something small. A strand of braided cord, a bit of wax, or a comb shaped like a bird's beak. One night, he hosts a fireside tutorial for young men about how to maintain beards while traveling. The tips are oddly poetic. Braid before battle, unbraid after. If the comb breaks, sharpen your nails. You still have tools. A clean beard speaks louder than a bloody boot. They nod, wide-eyed. Someone takes notes with charcoal on a bark strip. He even teaches a quick method for helmet-friendly hair. A flat braid that lies comfortably beneath iron caps and can be untied with one hand. Useful, he says, if your other hand is busy holding your insides in. Charming. Historians occasionally mention figures like Stygander, individuals who combined trade, grooming, and mobility. Some were called skeggsmeder, beardsmiths. Others were simply wanderers who brought combs instead of coins. But records are sparse, and whether these figures were revered or ridiculed varies wildly. In this village, at least, Stygander is revered. On his last night, he performs one final ritual, the mirroring. Each person stands before his polished shield, combs in hand, and speaks a single word aloud. One man says strength, a woman says forgiveness, a child says carrots. The shield reflects all without judgment. You approach, comb in hand. Your reflection stares back. Tired, maybe, but clearer. You say stillness. Stygander nods. Good word. Rare word. Then, just like that, he packs his tools, tucks his shears into his boots, and disappears into the snowy dark, his shield gleaming faintly with the last embers of the hearth. You sit quietly afterward, combing your hair with slower, more intentional strokes. He didn't change your life, He just reminded you how to hold the part that frames it. There's a sudden flurry of movement in the longhouse, but not the kind that involves shields or shouting. Instead, it's softer, faster, like the sound of parchment rustling and someone trying to hide a smile. Love is in the air, and where there is love, in this village at least, there is hair. You're witnessing the quiet, awkward choreography of Viking courtship, and it involves significantly more lint than you expected. A young man is kneeling near the hearth, carefully plucking strands of wool from his tunic and smoothing his braid. His hair has been freshly oiled and tied with a red ribbon, dyed with crushed berries, not just for color, but because red makes your intentions show through your eyebrows. According to a nearby elder, he's not alone. Across the room, a woman adjusts the position of her braid for the third time, rethreading a tiny bead near the temple. A message, you're told, that reads, "I see you, but I'm not sure I forgive that thing you said about my stew last week." Hair, here, is not just for battle or ritual. It's a kind of language, especially in matters of the heart. One tradition you're shown is the love lock token. A suitor cuts a small piece of their own hair, just a few strands, and wraps it in linen alongside a sprig of sweet grass or rosemary. It's tied with a bit of thread and placed somewhere unexpected for the other person to find. Tucked in a boot, hidden under a mug, or, in one case, strapped to the back of a goat. If the token is worn or braided into the recipient's hair, it's considered an acceptance, an invitation to talk more, walk together, or sit close by during long evenings. If it's returned, the suitor gets the message, and occasionally some leftover stew as consolation. You're shown a drawer filled with old hair tokens, saved across decades. Some are still faintly fragrant, others are crisp and forgotten. One is burned at the edges. That was from a man who loved too many women and tried the same braid on all of them. Someone says, shaking their head. Romantic grooming also includes the quiet comb exchange, where two people agree to swap combs for a night, not to use them, just to hold them, to smell the worn grip, to imagine the other person's hair sliding through the teeth. If the combs are returned wrapped in wool, it means, I think of you when the wind howls. You ask if anyone ever brushes each other's hair in public. A chorus of heads shake. Too forward. someone whispers. That's marriage behavior. Apparently, hair touching is deeply intimate, reserved for rituals, oaths, or long partnerships built on more than one good joke and a mutual dislike of the village eel stew. But hair is still used in flirtation. Subtly, a warrior might leave one braid intentionally loose, letting it fall near their eye during a feast. A woman might twist her locks behind her ears 3 times when speaking with someone she fancies. One person tells you, if they touch their braid and then scratch their nose, they probably want to kiss you or borrow your boots. Sometimes both. You sit down next to a couple quietly weaving a shared braid, a thin, symbolic strand that begins in her hair, stretches across their joined hands, and ends in his. It's not about holding tight. It's about knowing how much tension the braid can take before it unravels. Historians often overlook Viking romance, imagining only raids and revenge, but archaeological evidence has revealed keepsakes made from woven hair, sometimes encased in amber, bone, or even etched into rings. Some believe these were gifts exchanged before long voyages, promises tucked into pockets. You learn of a rare practice called the parting plait, a braid worn by someone whose partner has gone to sea. The braid is never cut, never combed, only retied and re-oiled as needed. It stays until the partner returns, or doesn't, in which case it is unbraided at sea and released into the waves with a whisper. You feel your own braid again, slightly crooked, still holding the bead someone gave you days ago. Suddenly, it feels heavier. At dusk, a final love ritual begins. The lint gathering. 2 people sit side by side and remove lint and hay from each other's cloaks. It's an act of care, affection, and quiet companionship. No teasing, no words, just fingers pulling bits of the day from the fabric of one another's life. You sit nearby, watching, listening. A woman finds a burr stuck in her partner's braid and removes it with a smile that says everything she doesn't. Love, in this village, is not shouted. It's combed, braided, shared in silence and wool. This morning, everything is going wrong. Not catastrophically. No wolves, no floods, no surprise taxes. But there's been a sudden drop in temperature. The pig has chewed through someone's shoelaces again, and several warriors are stomping around the longhouse in various states of hair-based frustration. The culprit, helmets, the thick, sweaty, helmet-crushing, braid-mangling reality of Viking headgear. Today is a training day for some of the younger fighters, and as they strap on their iron and leather helms, they quickly realize all that careful grooming, it's about to be destroyed. You watch as one warrior, freshly plaited into a triple braid style nicknamed the Shield of Sadness, winces as his helmet squashes his work flat. Another man tugs his beard out from under a chin strap with a noise that sounds like a goose being gently stepped on. Why do we even bother? Someone groans, removing their helmet and revealing a lopsided imprint of a decorative rivet stamped right across their forehead. Still, the grooming doesn't stop. It just adapts. A senior warrior steps forward, older, bearded, and entirely unbothered. His name is Skuli, and he's known for having both the finest helmet hair management system in the district and a scar shaped like a lightning bolt from when a fish once bit him. But that's another story. Skuli demonstrates the art of combat braiding, a series of hairstyles designed to survive even the most stubborn helm. They include the snake coil, a flat braid coiled tight at the nape of the neck, the axe loop, two side braids tucked under the helmet rim and pinned with bone toggles, the silent raven, a half up, half down knot meant to trick enemies into underestimating you. You try the snake coil. It takes 3 attempts and a lot of muttered apologies to your scalp, but you manage it. Your reward? A thumbs up from Skuli and a nod of approval from the pig, who's now wearing someone's helmet backwards. Even with these tricks, though, helmets still cause issues. Beards get sweaty and matted, especially when tucked into gorgets or collars. That's why warriors often carry small beard knives, not for cutting, but for lifting and fluffing post-battle. One man tells you he once stopped mid-fight just to detangle his mustache. Nearly lost a finger. Worth it. To counteract helmet havoc, the Longhouse has developed a pre-battle grooming station near the door. Before any skirmish or hunt, warriors line up for quick oiling to prevent helmet friction, braid tightening, usually by the fastest fingers in the village. Today, that's a girl named Ursa who can replate a side braid in 12 seconds. Combat sprigs, herbs tucked behind the ear or into the braid to keep the head clear, or ward off helmet headaches. You're handed a sprig of dried mint and a small pin carved with a wolf's head. Tuck it near the temple, someone says. Makes you look alert, even when you're not. Once the helmets are on, everyone stomps outside for drills, marching, shield work, the usual heroic crashing and shouting. But all you can think about is how much hair is currently flattened, compressed, and probably inventing new angles of suffering beneath those iron domes. Later, when the drills end and helmets are peeled off like stubborn turtle shells, the damage is assessed. One man's braid has become a single, sad knot. Another has a sweat curl so perfect it could be bottled and sold as essence of regret. A woman pulls off her helm, shakes her head, and reveals a braid that somehow improved in battle. No one dares ask how. The post-helmet rituals begin immediately. Steam towels are brought out to rehydrate the scalp. Comb relays begin, where villagers help each other untangle and rebraid before supper. One particularly dedicated boy begins chanting to his beard, as though apologizing to it. You take part, helping someone remove an unfortunate chunk of fur that fused to their braid under heat and pressure. They thank you with a stale piece of fish bread. It's the Viking way. Historians rarely document the small, daily frustrations of ancient life, especially something as unglamorous as helmet hair. But evidence from burial sites shows that grooming tools were often stored with helmets, not separately, suggesting warriors anticipated the aftermath. It's oddly comforting to know that even in a world of axe duels and blizzards, someone still once said, "This helmet makes my braid itch," and was immediately understood. That night, the longhouse smells of lavender oil and sheep butter as the combing continues late into the evening. The pig has now stolen a third helmet and is sleeping under it, snoring contentedly. You lie down with your own braid smoothed, realigned, and once again mint-scented. No one said this life was glamorous, but you'd never trade the feeling of unbuckling a helmet, shaking out your hair, and knowing someone will be there to help you braid it back into place. The wind howls tonight, not loud and angry, but long and low, like the sound of something ancient pacing just beyond the trees. You lie awake, listening, but you're not the only one. The fire is still burning low in the longhouse, casting long shadows that seem to move a beat slower than they should. And the air, it carries the faintest smell of moss, wet fur, and something else, ash. You're told that tonight is Hair Watch night, a time when the villagers honor the ghosts of the uncombed. Yes, you heard that right. These aren't your typical spirits. No clanking chains or moaning specters. These are the restless dead who were buried with tangled hair, unfinished braids, or untrimmed beards. According to legend, if a soul leaves the world looking unkempt, it wanders, unable to find its place in the next one. So tonight, the village gathers not to fight, feast, or even comb, but to listen. It begins with silence. No one speaks above a whisper. Tools are packed away. Mirrors are covered. Hair is left loose, unbraided, unbound, free to move with the firelight. It's a gesture of solidarity with the lost ones, a way of saying, you're not alone. You sit with the others around the hearth as an elder begins to chant in a slow, rhythmic voice. It's not a song exactly, more like a list. Names, fragments, maybe even memories. Unbraided Hela, lost in the fog. Knut of the crooked fringe. The boy with comb in pocket, never used. Each name is followed by a pause, during which everyone touches their own hair. Gently, reverently. Some close their eyes. Others stare into the flame. Then the stories begin. One woman recounts how her grandfather refused to comb his beard after his brother died, saying the grief was too tangled. When he passed, she trimmed his beard herself, thread by thread, and buried the comb with him. He hasn't visited since, she says with a smile. That's a good sign. Another man tells of his mother, whose final wish was to have her hair oiled and pinned with spruce needles. The family couldn't find the pins in time. The wind outside howled for weeks. We pinned a wreath to the barn door, he adds. It stopped. Children sit wide-eyed, listening. Some hug their combs close. One boy clutches a small braid of wool, whispering, "You're brushed now. You're brushed now." It's unclear who he's talking to, but no one interrupts. You're handed a small dish of embers and birch bark. On the bark, you write the name of someone, not a real ghost, perhaps, but someone whose hair you imagine never got the care it needed. You write the warrior who fell mid-comb, and place the bark gently into the fire. It flares briefly, then fades. Then comes the ghost combing. Each person takes a turn miming the act of combing someone else's hair. Without touching anyone, it's done in the air, slow and careful. A gesture meant to soothe unseen strands, to remind wandering spirits that they are still worthy of gentleness. You try it. Your hand moves in smooth, slow arcs, as though following the shape of a memory you never had. Someone nearby begins humming a lullaby. Comb the winds, comb the frost, tangle not what time has lost. Knot and braid, sleep and song. Wander not where you don't belong. It's barely above a whisper, but soon others join. The longhouse becomes a cradle of quiet sound. part prayer, part promise. Historians might struggle with this one. There are only faint traces in sagas. Lines like, "She combed his hair, though he was already gone," or, "The dead man's beard tangled the sails." Some scholars see these as metaphors. Others, listening to stories like these, wonder. What is clear is that in this world, hair is memory made physical. To leave it untended is to risk forgetting or being forgotten. Before bed, one final act is performed: the tethering. A single hair from each villager is placed in a clay bowl. They're mixed together with oil, then gently burned in a quiet ceremony. The idea? To tie the living and the dead together, just for tonight, in warmth and care. You add your strand. The flame crackles softly. The wind pauses at the window, listening. You settle into your furs, hair loose, no comb in sight, and as your eyes close, you wonder if any ghost watches tonight. Maybe they smile. Maybe their braid straightens in the dark. Maybe they remember what it feels like to be brushed one last time. Snow is falling again, but softer now, lazy, meandering flakes that drift down without urgency, as if even the sky has started to feel sleepy. Inside the longhouse, things are unusually still. The usual clatter of combs, the rustle of wool, even the pig's occasional snort, all hushed. Today is different. Today is farewell braiding. There's a body in the center of the longhouse, wrapped in layers of cloth, resting on a raised bed of pine branches and sheep wool. The face is serene. The eyes are closed, and around the body, villagers move with reverence, not to speak, not to cry, but to comb. This is the final grooming. A woman kneels at the head and gently smooths the forehead. "He always wanted his part on the left," she whispers. Someone else chuckles softly. "He changed it every other season." A third person begins working through the hair with a carved ivory comb, untangling strands with infinite patience. The comb is passed hand to hand, each person taking a turn, each stroke a memory, a prayer, a promise to carry something forward. In Viking tradition, preparing the dead was as much about honor as the funeral pyre itself. You couldn't send someone into the next world looking like they'd been caught in a snowstorm unbrushed. Hair was cleaned, braided, decorated. Sometimes Warriors were buried with combs tucked into their hands. Sometimes they were burned with their beard sheaths in place, so their spirits wouldn't arrive frizzed and frantic. As one elder puts it, you're invited to help, a quiet gesture from a woman nearby, and you kneel. Taking the comb, you work slowly, smoothing a single lock of hair and tucking it behind the ear. It's still warm from the firelit room. You murmur something without realizing what it is. It doesn't matter. The comb knows. Once the hair is set, the braid ritual begins. 4 strands are chosen from the scalp, 2 on each side, and braided together into a single long cord. This is known as the journey braid, meant to carry the soul's memory across the threshold. Into the braid, villagers tie small tokens: a sprig of dried lavender, a silver thread, a fish bone, a bead carved with initials. You recognize your own bead, the one someone gave you days ago. You tie it near the end of the braid, your fingers trembling only slightly. Then comes the beard binding. If the deceased wore a beard, it is combed, oiled, and tied with a final braid. For those who didn't, a symbolic cord is placed across the chest, representing all the untangled thoughts they've left behind. A fire is lit outside, the farewell flame. Not yet the pyre, just a way to let the wind know something important is happening. Smoke rises. It smells like pine resin, soap ash, and seaweed oil. You stand in a circle around the body as the braid is touched one last time by every hand present. Some press their palm against it. Others rest their cheek. One child simply waves at it and says, "Bye-bye. Don't forget your comb." Historians sometimes gloss over the domestic details of Viking funerary practice. They speak of ships and swords, of stones and fire. But the small things, the oiled hair, the smoothed brow, the braid lined with memory, those are what linger. The body is carried out in silence, save for the wind brushing gently against your cheek, like a comb's final pass through hair that will not grow again. That night, the longhouse smells faintly of herbs and smoke. You lie down beside your comb, freshly polished, now quiet. You think of every braid you've seen, every strand pulled into shape, every beard coiled into pride, every ribbon tied to love, or anger, or mourning. And you realize something. Hair, in this strange winter world, was never just hair. It was story. It was oath. It was goodbye. Now the fire burns low, and the combs are back in their pouches. No more braids tonight. No more oil or ribbon or whispered oaths behind the ear. Just stillness. You lie back under your fur blanket, the pig breathing softly beside you, the longhouse creaking with the sound of timbers settling in sleep. Outside, the wind brushes against the roof. Gentle now, not howling, not biting, just brushing. Like fingers smoothing hair before bed, your own braid rests against your neck, cool and silent. You can feel the weight of it, not heavy, just present. A memory of the day, of every gesture and hand that helped shape it. Someone snores faintly. Someone else murmurs a dream. You stare at the ceiling and imagine the braids in the rafters, the ones no longer worn, but woven into the wood by time. The invisible stories that float above you like strands of smoke, curling gently toward rest. And as your eyes drift closed, you realize you've been part of something bigger than hygiene or style. You've learned to comb with care, to braid with memory, to rest with reverence. So sleep now, let the knots undo. Let the strands float. Let the wind carry them wherever they're meant to go. Good night, little braid. Sleep well.